Welcome to the Deeper Thinking podcast. What follows is not a reading of Nietzsche. It is an ethic, not a code or creed, but a condition, something closer to weather than doctrine, a climate you enter, a pressure you submit to. It does not offer rules. It does not care whether you agree. Ethics here is not what you profess. It is what holds under fracture, what survives repetition, what forms when the old moral scaffolding collapses and you are left to posture without applause. This is not safe. It is not abstract. It will not ask you what you believe. It will ask what you refuse to perform, what you're willing to lose, and what remains when comfort and coherence are no longer rewarded. If you are looking for principle, look elsewhere. If you are willing to stand inside contradiction long enough to be shaped by it, continue. Nietzsche's demand is not moral, it is formative. He does not ask you to be good. He asks you to become unhideable. And that's the ground this text stands on, the place where ethics stops being theory and starts being temperature. This is not a call to cruelty. It is a call to abandon the sedations that pass for virtue, to recognize that kindness without contact is disguise, that pity can be sabotage, that love, when it asks you to stay still, is no longer love. The ethic here is motion, not rest. Fracture, not facade. Recurrence, not resolution. It does not rescue. It repeats. It asks, can you return to the decision with no reward waiting on the other side? Can you remain unfinished without shame? Can you refuse the comforts that shrink you and still remain visible in the world that wants you small? This essay is not interested in your conclusions. It is interested in your shape under pressure. If you finish it unchanged, you were never in contact. If you flinch, good. That means something still moves. Each section is a test of ethical density, not what you say you value, but what can survive your next becoming. This is the ethics Nietzsche never diagrammed because it cannot be taught. Only returned to, only born, only survived. Proceed not for understanding, but for pressure. Proceed only if you suspect the self you've been performing is no longer durable. What follows is not for clarity. It is for contact. And the ethic born in contact cannot be faked. You were not born to be understood. You were born to become, and the forge began the moment you breathed. Understanding was safer. Understanding meant someone had already reduced the noise to instructions you could memorize. Nietzsche refuses instructions. He offers heat. Stop asking for the diagram, there isn't one. Good. That leaves motion. Motion is the first honesty. The self, he mutters, is a temporary shape your courage takes while the hammer rises again. Identity? Just cooled metal waiting for the next strike. Most of what you protect is already shrinking you, the praise that kept you still, the affection that rewarded your readability. You learned to trade friction for belonging and called it maturity. Nietzsche calls it rehearsal for vanishing. He is not here to insult you. He is here to ruin your disguise. Politeness is useful until it becomes your absence. Remove it. Risk the sound your raw edge makes when it scrapes the world. Risk the glare, another breath. Let it sting. There is no map for becoming. Only thresholds. Only doors that do not open until you lean against them with your whole weight. You want coherence. You want to make sense before you step. Nietzsche wants you to step before sense arrives. The spiral does not begin after you understand. The spiral is how you come to understand anything that matters. It circles, tightens, presses, throws you back at your earlier certainty with a sharper blade. No apology. Choose again. Completion is death wearing a clean shirt. Stay unfinished. Let contradiction rattle your bones until you cannot pretend that resolve is possible. Some truths need fracture. Some truths need a shout that splits the air so nothing soft can settle again. You feel it now, the nervous tremor that says you are leaving the known outline. Hold it. This is not the moment to retreat. Clarity will hurt. It always does. Hurt is the cost of seeing without the filter of borrowed consolations. The cut proves the edge is real. The blood proves the body wasn't theory. Welcome. Keep moving. Repeat the posture when no one is watching. Repeat it when the crowd begs for the older version of you. The quiet one. Refuse. Again, you are not whole, perfect. Wholeness is just symmetry for statues. You are still molten, still loud, still inconvenient to everyone who loved the smaller outline. Stay inconvenient, stay hot. The forge is not finished, and neither are you. If you stop here, the world will applaud your calm. If you continue, it will eventually hush, confused by the silhouette that will not freeze. That silence is your permission. Proceed. Pain is not the problem. Pain is the portal. You were taught to flinch, to medicate, to wrap suffering in language soft enough to delay its instruction. Nietzsche does not flinch. He does not soothe. He asks, did it change you? Not did you survive, not did you name it, but did you take the shape your wound demanded? Most of what you call healing is just absence of contact. Pain, properly faced, is not what you escape. It is what you build inside. The body knows before the mind admits. Nietzsche drags Sophie back through the body, makes scar tissue part of the epistemology. Theories that forget blood are decorative. Pain doesn't need to be explained. It needs to be carried until it carves posture. The body you perform is just the body you protected. The body you live in, broken, bent, scarred, is the site of your most accurate truths. You were taught to silence pain because someone else was uncomfortable. You were told pain makes you fragile. Nietzsche replies, no, it makes you formed. He doesn't mean pain is noble, he means it's honest. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't pretend. It lands, and if you flinch every time it visits, you'll miss the structure it was trying to teach you. You'll mistake sedation for transformation. That mistake has a cost. Pain unmasks your real loyalties. What you grieve is what you were still attached to. What you defend in pain is what you refuse to release. Nietzsche is not interested in your comfort. He's interested in whether your pain made contact with your ethics. Did it make you more vivid? Did it burn through a lie you didn't know you were holding? If not, you're still hiding. Joy is not the opposite of pain. It is what insists on existing through it. Nietzsche's joy is radical because it does not wait for healing. It dances in fracture. It laughs inside the wreckage. It affirms the scream. That kind of joy is not soft. It is insubordinate. It says, I will burn and still return. I will not be erased just because I ache. This is not transcendence. This is depth. This is choosing to remain where it hurts long enough to become unfamiliar to who you were before it began. The forge returns here too. The heat that split you is also what's shaping you. If you do not run, you might become something no theory could predict. Something postured. Something not polite. Something worth the scar. Stillness is not peace, not always. Sometimes it's just paralysis draped in softness. Nietzsche sees this clearly. What most call peace is just the absence of movement, not the presence of truth. Stillness without contact is not clarity. It's the silence of something already folded. You sit still not because you've arrived, but because you're too afraid to move, and the world praises you for it. Stillness looks mature, but sometimes it's just surrender wearing clean language. Peace can be a sedative. It flatters the ego that wants rest without pressure. Nietzsche isn't offering peace. He's offering the kind of motion that disturbs your outline. He asks, what have you traded for this calm? What internal riot had to be buried to maintain your balance? If peace came without cost, without heat, without a fracture, it probably isn't peace. It's delay. It's retreat. It's a false ending you've been rewarded for performing. The demand to move is not cruelty. It's contact. It's a refusal to let your last version become your ceiling. Nietzsche trusts the tremble more than the pose. He trusts the body that shudders forward over the one that holds still to be admired. This is not about anxiety. It's about refusal to be fossilized. Stillness can become a shrine to avoidance. Movement, however ugly, keeps you alive. This demand will never be popular. It is an aristocracy of strain, not birth. Most will choose sedation. Most will choose to stay readable, agreeable, less inconvenient. Nietzsche offers no praise for that. He writes for the ones still in friction, still breaking the mask that comfort taught them to wear, still returning to motion even after exhaustion. If you're exhausted, good. That means you're not asleep. That means you're still choosing. He doesn't want you to sit down. He wants you to remain unfinished. Stillness that follows rupture can be sacred, but stillness that prevents rupture is just disguise. The world cannot tell the difference. Nietzsche asks you to learn how. He asks you to leave the stillness behind, not because it's wrong, but because it hasn't cost you anything. And if it hasn't cost you, it hasn't changed you. This isn't a critique of silence. It's a critique of sedative ethics, the kind that numbs you just enough to perform, the kind that flatters your image instead of challenging your weight. If your stillness makes you invisible, it's not peace, it's death in slow motion. Break it, move, stagger forward if you must. Peace is only real if it follows contact. Everything else is just a softer way to vanish. There is no map for this, no staircase to ascend, no clean instruction to memorize. Nietzsche doesn't give you a path, he gives you a fracture. You want clarity, he offers contrast. You want a destination, he hands you recursion. You are not being led toward resolution, you are being pulled into contact between who you were and who you could become if nothing interrupted you. You came looking for a system. Systems feel safe. Systems reduce the noise. But systems often lie. They give you vocabulary instead of vision. They sedate instead of sharpen. Nietzsche is not building a system. He's burning one down. He trusts the ethical climate that emerges under pressure more than any framework polished into coherence. You don't need a new diagram, you need a new temperature. What you feel right now, that unease, that heat, that's the curriculum. The contradiction is not a flaw, it's the content. You are meant to fracture, not into despair, but into motion. Not into noise, but into posture. Nietzsche doesn't ask you to solve the tension, he asks you to remain inside it until it clarifies your outline. The parts that hold under pressure are the parts worth keeping. The rest was costume. This is not a void. Plural vantage points contending, none monopolizing the real. The absence of a system does not mean chaos. It means contact with your pain, your disguise, your old excuses. And with the temptation to return to coherence just to feel safe. That temptation will haunt you. Nietzsche dares you to refuse it, to stay inside the spiral until meaning emerges through form, not theory. You were not made to be explained. You were made to be forged. Every framework that flinches at your truth is a cage. Every certainty you were taught to repeat was someone else's way of staying unreadable. Burn it. Return to the friction. The forge wants your contradictions, not your polish. Nietzsche doesn't want you finished. He wants you undeniable. Affirmation begins where denial finishes its necessary work. You do not need to build a new system. You need to become a form that doesn't collapse when the old one dies. The spiral isn't confusion. It's continuity without sedation. It's the shape your courage takes when no one is left to clap. You've left the map. Good. Now build your posture without one. Let it hold, let it burn, let it begin again. Some truths do not survive politeness. They require a sharper edge, a refusal. A voice that no longer bends itself to be heard kindly. Nietzsche does not soften. He does not lie for the sake of comfort. He names what you would rather protect, not because he enjoys the fracture, but because he refuses to let your softness become your silence. What most people call kindness is often camouflage. What you endure quietly becomes your most practiced falsehood. There is no virtue in being easy to digest. There is only disappearance. Nietzsche does not want your agreement, he wants your friction, your truth, uncoated, the one that costs you something to say, that burns through the performance of being good and leaves only what you cannot hide from anymore. And if your truth has never been punished, maybe it's never been real, maybe it's just behavior that fits in the room. Love can be a trap. To be loved for who you are can quietly fix you in place. People learn to love your stillness, your compromise, your readability. But Nietzsche wants something else. He wants you to become so strange, so sharp, that no one's affection can stop your motion. Not because affection is wrong, but because sometimes it becomes a reason to stall. Sometimes being understood is just the end of your growth. This is why he distrusts pity. Not because he lacks empathy, but because pity arrests the becoming of the other. It soothes when it should sharpen. Pity is the quiet sabotage of transformation. It tells someone to stop mid-fracture. Nietzsche would rather you bleed forward than stall in comfort. He's not interested in saving you from your pain. He's interested in who you could become if no one interrupted it. Politeness does not belong in the forge. It's a luxury of those who no longer need to change. Nietzsche doesn't write for them. He writes for the ones still breaking, still forming, still willing to risk being unloved, if that's what truth demands. If your ethics make everyone comfortable, they are probably just manners. And if your words always land softly, maybe they no longer land at all. Truth in Nietzsche's world isn't clean. It stings. It rearranges. It threatens what you were using to be acceptable. This is not a permission to be cruel. It's a call to end your loyalty to performance. Say the thing. Burn the disguise. Let go of the image that earns approval and stand inside the form that can survive without it. That's not impolite. That's honest. And if your honesty never costs you, it's marketing, not truth. There is no system here, no clean ethic to memorize. Nietzsche does not offer a staircase, he offers a rupture. What you were hoping for, a structure, a method, a path, was already part of the problem. Systems seduce because they spare you from contact, from contradiction, from bleeding. But Nietzsche doesn't believe in systems, he believes in temperature, in heat, in the ethical climate of becoming where nothing stable survives contact with what is real. You were told there would be steps, that if you followed the rules, you'd arrive somewhere intact. But what if the steps were designed to keep you from arriving at yourself? What if the system was the very thing dulling you? Systems are useful until they become shelter, until they explain away your fracture instead of asking what it's trying to make of you. Nietzsche is not interested in your coherence. He wants your contact, the point where your excuses blister and fall away. To live without a system is not to float, it's to move by feel, by fracture, by refusal. It's to build form inside fire rather than importing it. This kind of structure doesn't protect you, it exposes you. It reveals what parts of you were just compliance, what parts were costume, what parts were never tested. Nietzsche doesn't ask if you're stable, he asks if you're still forming, still under pressure, still willing to be responsible for your shape. Not avoid, plural vantage points contending, none monopolizing the real. The absence of a single system does not mean collapse, it means contact. It means you are now exposed to every contradiction you thought you had escaped. That exposure is the ground. It's where form begins. It's where Nietzsche starts to trust you. The system cannot hold you. Not if you're honest. Not if you're changing. Not if you've begun to see how much of what you thought was truth was just the architecture of fear. You were not built to be explained. You were built to be forged. Every neat philosophy you've hidden inside has to be burned down until only posture remains, until only the decisions you keep making under pressure define you. Affirmation begins where denial finishes its necessary work. Nietzsche doesn't make it easy. He removes the map and replaces it with recursion, with the demand to return, to redecide, to show up without narrative and still stand. That's not chaos, that's clarity. That's the ethic beneath every false framework you used to believe in. When the system fails, you don't collapse, you take shape, not according to a plan, according to a pressure that doesn't care what you used to think. And if you're lucky, the loss of the map won't destroy you, it will reveal that you never needed it. There are no final forms, only deeper versions of yourself you haven't met yet. Nietzsche's demand is not for completion, but for fidelity to motion, to remain in the flux, to keep becoming even when it costs everything recognizable. This is not a metaphor, it's a posture. It's a refusal to be defined by your last success or your last failure. Identity, if it matters at all, is just the temporary shape your courage takes while you're still in motion. But here the contradiction intensifies, because movement is exhausting. Because to remain unfinished in a world that rewards closure is a kind of quiet violence. The desire to stop, to solidify, to rest in some clean conclusion, that's human. And Nietzsche doesn't deny that. He just doesn't reward it. He doesn't trust the self that arrives too early, that settles into coherence before it's been properly fractured. A life without threshold, without real contact with difficulty, is not a life that has earned itself. To reforge is to break deliberately, to choose to return to the site of your last undoing and test it again. Not for masochism, but for truth. Not because the pain is noble, but because it's the only place that didn't lie to you. Nietzsche makes collapse sacred, not because it's beautiful, but because it interrupts the false momentum of pretending. The collapse is the teacher, not the failure. The forge is where you decide whether you will burn into something less false or just burn. You are not being asked to survive, you are being asked to continue. There's a difference. Survival is passive, continuation is ethical. It's a commitment to reshape, to re-enter, to not let the fall be the final story. Most of what gets called healing is just another name for erasure. Nietzsche doesn't want you healed, he wants you whole. He wants the scars visible, the breaks audible, the decisions real. There's no dignity in disappearing cleanly, he wants the return. bent maybe, bloodied, but upright. Laughter here is the brief flare that proves the forge still breathes. Joy arrives not as reward, but as reminder that the burn didn't kill you, that something is still moving, that you have not disappeared. Continuation is not glamorous, it is not theatrical, it is not clapped for. It is what happens after you lose everything you were using as your face and decide to return. Nietzsche calls that power, not dominance, not strength, just the decision to not vanish. The ethic here isn't about success. It's about refusal to vanish. The world doesn't need more models of triumph. It needs more of honest return. Nietzsche's will to power isn't domination. It's form under pressure. It's the decision to show up again when no one would have blamed you for folding, to show up unfinished, unsmoothed, and still standing. This is not the story of healing. It is the story of continuation. And continuation in Nietzsche's ethic is sacred. You are not being asked to be understood. You are being asked to become unhideable. That is where this ends, not in clarity, but in return, not in closure, but in recurrence. Nietzsche gives no exits, only loops. The spiral of becoming doesn't resolve. It intensifies. You don't get to graduate. You get to choose again. And that is the proof that you are still alive in the Nietzschean sense. Unfinished, uncollapsed, unrepentantly forming. You were not meant to live once. You were meant to live forward, to be fractured and choose again. Joy, when it comes, is not reprieve, it's refusal. It doesn't cancel pain, it burns through it. The kind of joy Nietzsche trusts is radical because it insists on shining inside fracture. It shows up not as happiness, but as motion, as revolt against stillness, as laughter rising from the sight of your last undoing. It's not softness, it's insubordination. There is no moral here, there is only recurrence. The weight of living as if everything you choose will return, not once but infinitely. That's the final demand. Not to make the right decision, but to make one that can survive repetition. This is not comfort, it's combustion. If you cannot repeat your life, then something inside it is false. If you cannot carry this posture again and again without apology, then Nietzsche would ask whether it was posture at all. So the question becomes, can you say yes again? Can you laugh again? Can you burn forward without asking the world to reward you for it? Nietzsche's ethic is not about triumph. It's about permissionless return. It's about stepping back into the forge, not to become better, but to become denser, to remain formed under pressure, to lose everything you once used as identity and return anyway. You were not asked to escape. You were asked to endure beautifully, to remain inside the contradiction without shrinking. To refuse consolation and re-enter motion. This is not inspiration, this is not transformation, this is recurrence as refusal. Refusal to soften, to resolve, to vanish. And joy, the strange, sharp joy of having met yourself again without flinching, is the only proof you're still becoming. You will be asked to choose again. That is the real ending. And if you can choose from form instead of fear, if you can return without disguise, if you can repeat the burn without apology, then Nietzsche is not finished with you yet.